Hi all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm starting off a new Fresh Reads vlog, and I actually took a break in May and didn't have a Fresh Reads vlog, and that was basically because I was waiting for my books to arrive. I had a couple on hold, and then I took one off, and then I was just waiting for the Fresh Reads to get to me, and so May just didn't happen for this vlog, but I'm starting off June reading the Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden, and I believe that this book made the shortlist for the Women's Prize for fiction, and I believe that the winner will be announced June 11th. So my plan is to get this read before then and get this video out by then or before then. So it's interesting because some of the other Fresh Reads vlogs that I've done, or all of them actually, were books that didn't seem to be getting a lot of hype or a lot of talk on BookTube. And so this one is certainly not the case. This has been, because it was nominated as well for the Booker, this book has been, talked about a lot on BookTube, and so it's interesting to be reading it now when it's still, popular, but obviously lots of people have been reading this and filming videos about this for the last year. And so, where am I right now? I've gotten to chapter 3. And it's interesting. My first impressions are really similar to what everyone has already talked about. This book is about focusing mainly on Isabel, who is living in a home that she moved into during the war with her brothers in the Netherlands. And she is now the sole person living there after her mother passed away. Her older brother is going to have the rights to the house, and she is kind of precariously waiting for his decision about whether he moves into this house or, marries and moves into the house, or whether she gets to stay there. It's interesting because this is the early 1960s, and it has a very similar feeling to a Jane Austen novel to me, where, Sense and Sensibility, you've got these women who are at the mercy of their brothers or fathers. And it's a little bit strange to be thinking about that in the context of women's lives in the 1960s in Europe, because Jane Austen novels are set in the 18th century. So it's a little bit strange, and my first impressions are that I feel like I'm just getting into the story, just starting out, just getting to know the characters. So I will check in again with you about this when I have reached the halfway point and let you know how I feel about it then. Hi everybody. Okay, I've reached halfway in the Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden, and I really don't know how I feel about this. I'm not in love with this novel, and yet it is intriguing enough for me to keep reading. But I do find it very similar to The Paying Guests by Sarah Waters. So the scenario of this is the same scenario with just some details changed. In terms of a sexual awakening. So I would say this book is about a sexual awakening. I feel like everyone I've heard talk about this has been very vague about what's actually happening. I'm not sure if it's because they think it's a spoiler, but I don't really think it's a spoiler because Isabel, the whole premise of this woman coming to stay with Isabel is, this is one of the possibilities of such an encounter, of such a situation, if we'll call it that. So I don't find Isabel to be she's not a sympathetic character, and she's not supposed to be. You're not really supposed to like her, I don't think. Although I know that people love certain types of personalities in novels, like Olive Kitteridge, this kind of grumpy, difficult person who's soft underneath is a very popular type of main character. And I have a few other issues with, there's a lot of repetition in the first half. There was a lot of repetition in the first half around Isabel's, I guess we're kind of in Isabel's head, but not, we're kind of in Isabel's head as the narration progresses, and she fixates on things. So, I would say that there's some sort of commentary here about Isabel being on some sort of spectrum, or some sort of having some sort of something like OCD or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what we're supposed to assume, but she does obsess over things and kind of fixate on things in a way that, today, and probably not in 1961, would be, encouraged to get some sort of diagnosis to talk about. And then I also find that, her sexual awakening has this very it's referencing different aspects as well of discomfort in her own body, and kind of like denial of her own urges, denial, like very much a self-denial. Her character is very rigid, and the problem for me with it is that her self-deprecation doesn't make any sense. There's no I don't know where it comes from, and I don't understand where it is. Like, she feels unsafe, she feels safe in the house. The house is sometimes something she loves, but the love of the house is not really coming through as much as her obsession with the order and the living in the house. So I think for me, there's a little bit of a difficulty in what the author is trying to convey with these different things. I don't feel like I'm not emotionally invested in what's going on with the main character or with the other characters. And again, I feel like I've read a scenario like this where I was very invested in the characters, and so I'm struggling with relating to everybody in this story. This is one of the dangers of reading a book that's very hyped. It's second, potentially more. I don't know. I haven't looked into it, how many prizes it's been nominated for. And when you're reading it like this, and I've stopped it halfway and I'm checking in with you, perhaps in the second half, there's going to be some amazing thing that happens that's going to like, you know, move this out of 3-star realm for me into like a 4.5, 5-star, or like a 4-star. But I mean, I don't think there's anything particularly beautiful about the writing. There's not a lot of beautiful description or poeticness to it. It's just very okay. It's just fine. There's nothing. So I'm waiting for something to make it feel exceptional. And just right now, it just feels like a regular story, like a regular novel, depicting, you know, a certain place and a certain time with a certain type of person who is trying to find herself and, again, kind of remove these shackles. And like another person is kind of responsible for awakening something. But I'm just like not really buying the that awakening. It's not completely landing for me. It's a little bit easy. It feels a little bit simplistic. She seems like this very complex character, and yet there's not very many layers when you go down. So I don't know. That's where I am so far. And I will check in again with you when I have finished this. So I finished the Safekeep this morning. I apologize if you can hear a lawnmower in the background. I have very mixed feelings about this novel. I have very mixed feelings. I think that the twist was fairly obvious. I did realize the twist just before it happened. And I didn't dislike it. I think that the themes of this novel are very important. The topic is very important. I just don't know if the execution was to my personal liking. So this book, I mean, this style is definitely a style that I have read before. I would compare Yael van der Wouden's writing to Sarah Waters and to Emma Donoghue. So if you like the style of Sarah Waters and Emma Donoghue, then I would say, you know, you would probably like the Safekeep. Unlike Sarah Waters and Emma Donoghue, I feel that Yael van der Wouden's characters were a bit distant, and I couldn't get fully into their court. Hi everybody. I thought I would insert this here, even though I'm filming this after I filmed my last clip about the book. Or actually, I don't know where I'll put it, but it's in here. So yesterday, I was watching Eric Anderson's Women's Prize for Fiction short list review with his friend Anna. And when they got to the Safekeep, he mentioned that he had watched a interview with Yael van der Wouden about the fact that she was inspired by Fingersmith, by Sarah Waters, to write this book. And as I had said multiple times, or at least twice while I was reviewing this book, it felt very derivative of Sarah Waters to me. And so that feeling left me kind of feeling strange about the book even more, because I don't think it's bad to be inspired by someone else's book. I mean, it's a very typical way to write novels. Like Barbara Kingsolver did it with Demon Copperhead and David Copperfield, and Percival Everett did it with James and Huckleberry Finn, both of which those books I have not read, by the way. But for me, what I found difficult about this comparison is this idea that you're inspired by this book, so you want to pay homage to it by writing a book that's similar, but then, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it is adding anything to a conversation, or I don't know. I just felt like, there's authors who have honed their craft over many years, and they've created a style that really works for them. And for your debut novel to be something that was inspired by another novel you really admired, and to get all this attention and all this, praise for it, when to me it was too similar or not. I don't know. I feel weird about it. So I just wanted to add this in as a little aside, and just go on to say that, yeah, it doesn't make me like the book more to know that Sarah Waters was an influence on it. But I do think authors can be inspired by each other, but I do find it slightly problematic, and lacking a kind of own voice. Like, what is her voice herself, without the influence of Sarah Waters? So yeah, that's my comment on that, for whatever it's worth. Okay, back to the regular video. I think that there can be many reasons for that, in terms of like a cultural difference in just the fact that it's Dutch people from the Netherlands, as opposed to people from England or Ireland, because there's a difference in culture. There's a bit more restraint. There's just a different way of being. And so I appreciate that, but I couldn't get as invested in the characters. And similarly to how I've felt at the end of some of Sarah Waters' novels, I've read 2 Sarah Waters, I've read 4 or 5 Emma Donoghues. I struggle sometimes with a happy ending. And I struggle with how neatly this book was wrapped up, because I think that it has this message of love conquering all, and I don't think I really believe that. And I also think that the issues brought up in here, and I am being cryptic because if you haven't read this, then I don't want to spoil the kind of twist to the story for you, but the issues being brought up in here are very complex and layered, and I think that the author handled them with complexity and layering, but in making it into a love story, it convolutes it to a level that for me makes me uncomfortable. In terms of the complexity of a kind of colonial mindset, which I think this book is addressing. And I think that it is important to address these types of issues. And I'm glad that the Safekeep addresses them. But again, it feels very watered down when you put the love story on top of it. So I think that's where my complication lies in the story. I appreciate what she did here. I'm not sure I feel that it is worthy of the level of attention. It's a great novel, but I don't know, like all these awards nominations. I think that this speaks to a very specific problem in Western culture around dealing with these complex issues. And I think it's important to have a mirror for ourselves, but it's also important for us to really confront these issues with more of a challenge. Isabel goes to confront her uncle and her aunt. She doesn't really come out and say anything. And, these are the conversations, these are the hard conversations that need to be had around these issues. Again, I don't want to mention what the issue is specifically because if you haven't read the book, it will spoil the second half for you. But if you have read the book and you're familiar, this is something that I'm a Canadian, I live on Canadian soil as a settler with my ancestors coming from Ireland, Scotland, and England. So this is an issue that I have been self-educating around and learning about for the last, 5 years more specifically, but longer than that. And, we all have a situation like this if you are a white Western civilization. People of color as well have this same issue, so it depends on the culture you're in. To be the conquering culture is problematic, and to be the conquered culture is an almost impossible situation. And I'm glad that this book addressed that, but I feel like love stories woven in with this, it is, it's not really pushing the button. It's just kind of revealing the button. And then everyone's like, oh, there's the button. And then it's like, but, they loved each other, so they just worked it out. And it's like, okay, but what are we really going to do and say about this? How are we really going to fix this? How are we really going to create equity and justice? And maybe you'll say I'm putting too much importance on a novel representing that, but and the author being Jewish, and I don't know how her history plays into this story, and if it is a personal story, there's nothing in the acknowledgments about that. I guess I'd have to look that up. If any of you have a link to an interview or article that you've read around that, I would be really interested to know. And I haven't heard anyone talk about it in relation to reviewing this book for prizes either. So again, it's like, is everyone just enjoying the love story of this, or are they actually thinking about the issues that this book raises? Because to me, that should be equally important. And again, not being a person who seeks out love stories in my fiction, that was what I preferred to focus on. That was what was more interesting to me in the story. And yes, you know, this story also is very important for LGBTQ culture. So there's that layer as well. So I'm just wondering if that was the layer, you know, that people focused on more than the colonial mindset aspect. So anyway, those are my feelings, and they're very complicated about the Safekeep. I am going to be getting this out before the winner is announced. So if this book is the winner, then congratulations to the author. I've only read 2 books off of the shortlist, and I would say I did prefer Good Girl to this book. Good Girl was a 5-star. This for me was a 3-star. You know, I think it has a lot of merit, but it just didn't make me feel and grab my heart the way Good Girl did. So those are my 2 cents on the 2 books that I have read for this prize. And I want to thank you so much for watching this vlog, and I will be back again soon with another video.